On today's agenda, there are two papers for discussion. Prior to the meeting, the paper ECI 2024-25-12, an information paper, has been circulated among the members. It sets out the approved directorate grade establishment changes approved since year 2002, and also the impact of the discussion items on the establishment of directorate grade officers. I remind members, if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest concerning the items on discussion today, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak in accordance with ROP 83A. I also bring to your attention ROP 84 concerning voting in matters in which you have direct pecuniary interest in. Item 1 on the agenda, paper EC 2024-513, is a proposal from the Development Bureau, Planning and Lands. Proposed retention of one-time limited supernumerary post of Administrative Officer Staff Grade C D2 in the Planning and Lands branch of the Development Bureau with effect from the 1st of April or with immediate effect upon approval of the Finance Committee, whichever is the later, up to the 31st of March 2028 to sustain directorate support for the continued implementation of various land supply initiatives related to developments of industry sites. The government has consulted the panel on development on the proposal on the 25th of February this year. Today, to answer members' questions, we have Ms. Doris Ho, Permanent Secretary for Development, Planning and Lands, Mr. Gary Poon, Deputy Secretary for Development, Planning and Lands 1, and Ms. Belinda Chong, Principal Assistant Secretary for Development, Planning and Lands 7. Now, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok is not here. I will brief members on his behalf concerning the salient discussion point of the panel on development. The panel on development has discussed the establishment proposal at its meeting on the 25th of February this year concerning the retention of a AO Staff Grade C time-limited supernumerary position designated as Principal Assistant Secretary, Planning and Lands 7 for 3 years. The panel does not object to the submission of this proposal for our consideration. Members supported the government's land supply measure in relation to industry sites, and concerns were raised on the progress of certain measures. For example, reclamation of the Long Gu Tan, replanning of Two Moon West, supporting affected operators, multi-story building for modern industries, and also revitalization of industrial buildings. Also, members raised concern about the coordination of work with other departments concerning the above measures, and also the supervising and coordinating role played by the PAS 7. The government has responded to members' questions and concerns. Supplementary information has been submitted after the meeting to detail the major duty and also policy measures under the PAS portfolio after the restoration of the position in February 2023. In pursuance to members' request, the administration promised to detail the quantifiable KPIs for the post in the paper submitted to us. Ms. Doris Ho. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Now, as the Chairman said, today we seek member support for the retention of the D2 post under the Planning and Lands branch of the Development Bureau. The title is Principal Assistant Secretary, Planning and Lands 7. Now, the colleague, as mentioned by the Chairman, is mainly responsible for industry sites. In other words, these sites are for developing the industries and supporting the economy. Also, a major duty of the colleague is providing support to brownfield site operators affected by the Northern Metropolis development. The colleague provides support by identifying sites to relocate the operators. Now, the post was created in 2018. Back then, the position lasts for 5 years. The post was kept for another 2 years in 2023 up to the 31st of March this year. Now, in our written supplement, we have detailed the major tasks of the colleague in the past 2 years. Many members here were there when we introduced legislative amendments to 6 pieces of legislation back in 2023. So that colleague was also in a coordinating role for that 6 pieces of legislative amendments. Now, the major tasks for the position holder in the next 3 years have been detailed in the paper. Let me highlight several points. First, Longgutan reclamation and replanning of Chu Mun West. That would be one of the major work areas of the position holder. By the middle of this year, we will consult the industry players concerning the land use for the more than 300-hectare large sites, and then we will conduct environmental impact assessment so that we can start the rezoning process in 2026. Another major task is supporting brownfield site operators. This is a matter of concern. Now, in the following, because of the rapid development of the northern metropolis, a large number of brownfield site operators will be affected. Now, with the coordination of the position holder, we have conducted another round of land search to find land for relocation of brownfield site operations. We have identified 120 hectares of government land. Now, through a limited or restricted tendering, we seek to facilitate relocation of brownfield site operators in a streamlined approach. Now, the colleague is responsible for industry sites. The economic landscape is changing rapidly. The land use for northern metropolis would be industry-led. So we would like to fully utilize the industry sites in the northern metropolis and over the territory. We plan to conduct regular review on the land use of industry sites. So this colleague will review the land use of industry sites in urban areas and encourage the users to move into the northern metropolis to start its development while releasing sites with easy traffic access in the urban areas for other purposes. And also, the colleague will continue to monitor the industrial building revitalization scheme. We have a funding scheme to support the use of vacant government sites by NGOs as well. That includes vacant school premises and other idling government sites. Subsidies will be offered to NGOs to utilize these sites to provide community services. So these are the major tasks for the position holder in the next 3 years. With member support, the post will last until the 31st of March 2028. That concludes my briefing. Thank you, PAS, Permanent Secretary. There are 8 members: Mr. Stephen Ho, Dr. Chao Kong, Mr. Rock Chen, Shanghai Long, Perry Yu, Brave Chen, Ms. Judy Chen, and Ms. Carmen Kan. 8 members. Each of you will have 5 minutes. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the government, especially the Development Bureau, has been working very hard to promote the development of the northern metropolis. Legislative amendments have been introduced to smoothen the process. Now we appreciate the difficulty of this task. Paragraph 5 in the paper, it says that farms operators would be moved to multi-story buildings. But the major difficulties lie in the compensation for affected operators. So now the resumption effort is very scattered. The farms are resumed in a scattered approach. So in terms of industry design, you need to work with the EEB. You can't work by yourself. When resuming these land, you need to establish a fund to pay for the compensation. Otherwise, a small farm operator will not get the loan needed from the bank to support the relocation. Now the Sampo Shu Wetland Park, the position holder will be responsible for planning the park as well. Now the agriculture and fishery industries are also important industries. Now the government has indicated its intent to resume certain sites. Now, starting from 2021, when the Northern Metropolis Plan was announced, landowners used various means to remove the operators, for example, by raising the rents by 20%. So now the compensation available will go into the pockets of the new operators, but not the originally affected operators. And the landowner and the recipients of the compensation will simply take the compensation and leave the industry. So you need to make plans for the relocation and revival of the industry. These are all under the portfolio of the future post holder. And you can't follow the old workflow. If you wait for the approval from the Finance Committee, compensation will not be available in years, and everything will have changed then. Now, Longkutan, I am open to the idea. I don't have a fixed position. Now, according to the government's plan, Longkutan will be, the reclamation will cover 50% of Longkutan. Now, consider our fiscal position. You will have to connect the two halves of Longkutan via a bridge or a tunnel. So given our fiscal position, will this future post holder consider a more cost-effective means to take forward the reclamation of Longkutan? Thank you.
Thank you for your 3 questions. First, about multi-story farms. Well, actually, the Development Bureau and the EEB have worked together very closely. In the past, we also have discussed this with Mr. Ho. In the Development Bureau, from our perspective, we basically have a main role in resumption of land or land supply and compensation arrangement. One of the lot is in Lok Wu. We hope that by 2026 or even earlier, we will be able to complete a site formation, and then we can pass it to the Development Bureau so that the industries can start their planning for the farms to be installed in the multi-story buildings. We have actually conducted visits to the affected farms, and we actually informed them in advance about our plan of resuming their land. And we also discuss or inform them, tell them about the compensation we are prepared to pay to them in a rough figure. Next phase, we can discuss with the EEB to see how we could come up with a concrete proposal so that the affected farm operators will be interested and will have the ability to raise funds to join in the plan. I'm sorry, Chair. I know that time is running out. I'll be brief. Second question about the Samboshu Wetland Park. For the resumption of this land, this is not under the purview of the possession holder. But I'd like to mention that we have already expedited our plan for resumption of land. I'm sorry, perhaps please focus on point 1 and 2. It's actually related to the resumption of land arrangement and compensation. You just leave point 2, it's all right. Don't talk about Samboshu yet. Because the farm operators have no capital to actually talk about how they could replan their operations. Yeah, I think that the Secretary understand the points already. Well, for us in our logistic industries, actually, we are not forced to move from the industry. We just have to afford higher rents. Next, Mr. Chairman Kwong. Thank you, Chair, about this position. D2, it's actually the third time to be returned, first in 2018 and then from 2023, 2 years more, and then now it's a proposal to retain it for 3 years more. When I look at the 2017 paper, it stated that this position holder will support the work of the director, while including the nearshore reclamation of Longkutan and also providing support to the brownfield operators. Well, actually 6 or 7 years have lapsed. These two initiatives should have completed or should be on track. Shall we perhaps leave these kind of work should be left to other colleagues to follow through? And then on the same paper issued in 2017, it also mentioned about the position holder should be responsible for the engineering study. And then on the second paper in 2023, it says that the progress was satisfactory. About the progress about the engineering study was satisfactory. But if it was satisfactory, how come the position holders, the position had to be retained or extended? And third, if we look at the Civil Service Affairs paper, there are actually 13 directorate grade staff, and for EEB they had 12, and for time limited posts, the development have 5 such post holder, and for EEB for the environment branch they didn't have any. So I understand that your bureau will have more and more workload, but then I think the structure should not be expanded. I think you should actually redeploy your internal resources to shoulder this work. 3 questions from the member. First, about the nearshore reclamation of Longkutan, the engineering survey, and about brownfield operations. Do we need such a position holder in the long term? For the study on Longkutan, the survey or the study actually is near completion. We will then conduct public consultation, and then we will conduct environmental assessment study. If all these are completed and with funding available, the project could start. So in the long run, this work will be handled or will be handed over to other relevant departments to follow through. Well, of course, we still need some colleagues from the Bureau to do coordination of this project. For brownfield operation assistance, if we're going to continue to develop the Northern Metropolis, we will affect quite a lot of brownfield operators. So we do need this position holder, not just in the coming 3 years, but even in the longer term, for this colleague to continue to coordinate and also to follow through the project of the development of Northern Metropolis. As regards Lung Ku Tan project, we have almost completed the engineering study. We're going to conduct public consultation. Well, but then there has been some hiccups in the past years because about the reclamation area of Lung Ku Tan. It will be very close to an indigenous village. So the villagers had some objection about our reclamation plan. So in the process, we had to conduct consultation. We tried to communicate with them so that we could come up with a consensus with them. And also, there were quite a lot of industry operations in Lung Ku Tan. So we had a discussion about whether, for instance, the power plant and also the steel plants should be relocated or should be retained in Lung Ku Tan. So it had taken a bit of time to conduct these consultation and discussion. Eventually, we decided to have these operations remained in its original site in Lung Ku Tan. As regards your third question, whether we have considered redeploying our internal resources. Indeed, we have. As in the paper, we have stated that we have studied whether we could redeploy our internal existing resources. For instance, in our plan department to see to cover the work of this position holder. Well, as a result, we find that this is not possible because the existing colleagues in the relevant bureau have already quite a heavy workload. So after careful consideration, we find that it's not appropriate to redeploy internal resources. Mr. Cheung, you have a follow-up question? Yes, I think under your bureau you have quite a lot of time-limited positions, and you mentioned that this position will actually have a long-term workload. So I believe that this position will have to be extended further after 3 years. Well, your time is up. Next, Mr. Rockchen. Yes, I heard reply from the permanent secretary. But I think it's not just simply to move the portfolio of this D2 colleague to another D2 colleague in your bureau. Well, I think you have to reduce some of the workload of the existing D2 colleagues so that they would have the ability to receive more workload. I think you have to look or just really have to take a good look at all the existing workload of all your D2 staff or even D2 staffs in other departments and bureaus to see whether you could redeploy internal resources. Well, in the paper, paragraph 17, it states that from 2018, the government have received 9 applications for revitalization of industrial buildings, and only 3 of them have been approved. So the success rate is not very high, and I'd like to know the reason why. And number 3, for this position holder, would it be possible for this colleague to review the entire plan of revitalization of industrial buildings so that this scheme could be more effective? All right, first is a point of clarification. Second is a question. Thank you, Chairman. For the first question, when we look at our planning department, 12 D2 colleagues. Some of them are doing planning works, some are doing housing works, and there are also some colleagues working on the projects of Northern Metropolis development. We don't have to further mention about the last one because, as we all know, this project is really taking up a lot of their time. We are going to have to develop the Northern Metropolis. For buildings, in the recent years, these colleagues have actually reviewed the existing legislation, for instance, the building legislation, and they already have a very heavy workload. As for lands department, they have to provide support to the team working on Northern Metropolis development. So the responsibilities cover not just the resumption of land, it's also about the arrangement of compensation, when compensation should be released, and how it could be conducted. As for planning department, we have a lot of other important plans as well, not just the Northern Metropolis. We have Tung Chung development plan, etc. So we have actually looked at all the existing portfolios of our existing D2 colleagues. So as a result, you find that they are already having a full plate, and it is quite impossible to ask these colleagues to show them more work. As for revitalization of industrial buildings, for the 9 applications received, we received actually these applications since 2018. The number of applications received is actually closely related to our economic performance of our society. If the economic situation is good, the owners may have more incentive to revitalize their existing premises or to renovate their premises. And that is perhaps that could explain why since 2018, in the past few years, we have not been able to receive more applications. Although it's a small number, we still have to, or the colleague will still have to review the entire scheme to see how it could become more attractive so that more people would be interested to submit applications. Among the 9 applications, we found 3 of them have been approved. Well, actually, one of the project has been completed. They have actually renovated the entire building. And this colleague will continue to see whether there is still room for enhancing the entire scheme so that we could expedite the work on the revitalization of industrial buildings. Yes, I totally agree with what the Permanent Secretary has said. We have to actually enhance the entire revitalization plan so that it could be more effective. As we've heard, we have only 9 applications and only 3 have been approved, so the success rate is really not very impressive. Well, I think in addition to enhancing the process, I think we have to increase incentives because I heard that this scheme is not very attractive to many of the people. We now have 7 colleagues waiting to speak, each 5 minutes. I think we'll be running out of time. So after Mr. Shanghai Long, I'm going to draw the line because we have conducted the meeting for half an hour now. For colleagues who would like to raise questions and still in the building, please come down as soon as possible.
Thank you. Now, this D2 grade officer, designated as PAS Planning and Lands 7, has a lot on her shoulder. It includes revitalization of industrial buildings, supporting brownfield site operators, and finding new industry sites. But I remember some adjustments was made to the government's priority. For example, in the previous term of the government, it focused on Lantau Tomorrow. Now, this term of the government focuses on Northern Metropolis. So have the colleagues responsible for the Lantau Tomorrow project been redeployed to the development of Northern Metropolis, Longgu Town Reclamation, and Chu Mun West replanning already. Now, I'm also concerned about the revitalization of industrial buildings. Now, from the number of applications to the TPB, there are 80 applications. It shows that many building owners are eager to change the uses of their industrial buildings. Now, especially 80% of the floor space will be dedicated to culture and space and innovation. But it seems the government support is underwhelming. From OGO to Oasis, they are simply asking the applicants to find help from the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park or the Cyberport. The government is not giving support to these building owners to turn their industrial floor space into innovative spaces. Now, can the government offer more directions and coordination to steer the change? I don't see any cross-departmental support in that. You are just asking the applicants to go to Cyberport and Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. So in terms of the progress of revitalizing industrial buildings, will they be the future sites for I&T development? Permanent Secretary, thank you. Now, there are two branches under the Development Bureau. One is Planning and Lands, that's my branch. The other is Capital Works branch. Now, for Land Hub Tomorrow project, it is the purview of the Capital Works branch. Now, I thank Mr. Shang's concern on the number of applications for revitalization of industrial buildings. There are 80 applications, 9 are wholesale conversion of industrial building. That means that we allow the owner of the industrial building to, without paying a premium, to convert his floor space into office floor space. That is a very great financial incentive. Now, since we have this favorable policy for the landowner, we require the owner to set aside 10% of his floor space for the government's use. Now, among the approved cases, the 10% floor space is dedicated to I&T and research purposes. So we will be pleased to meet with Mr. Shang Hailong further after the meeting. If there are interested parties to set up in Hong Kong, outside of Cyber Park and the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, actually revitalized industrial buildings are very attractive places for these startups or businesses to operate. Now we can convey the message to Oasis. We can ask the Oasis to suggest to applicants that actually revitalize industrial building floor space suits their needs. Mr. Perry, thank you. I fully support the full development of the Northern Metropolis. Now, last month, I went to Nansha together with some colleagues. Now, back in June 2023, the then site for the Culture and Sports Center was still a fish pond. Now, last month when we went there, the project is going to be completed soon, and in 2 months' time, the sports center will be commissioned. That's a major piece of infrastructure. That's a 60,000-seat Grade A sports stadium. with a large indoor sports center and a large swimming center. The scale is on a par with our Kai Tak Sports Park. So after visiting the project, I'm even more eager to see the early completion of our Northern Metropolis project. Now, for the retention of this post, we have had a lot of discussion at the panel meeting. Now, I see that there are lots of work to be done by the position holder. But still, we have the concern. After granting the funding approval for the retention of this position, when will we see something happening? Now, we always talk about the blue and green ecotourism circle. When will we have the detailed plan for that project? And when will we have a clear blueprint for industry sites? Without a clear plan, you can't expect developers to participate in your efforts. So I have much hope for the position holder. So the post has been retained twice. Now, for this retention, will the position holder be the same as before? Is there a working mechanism to coordinate with other bureaus and departments? Permanent Secretary, thank you. Let me answer the questions in order. Now, concerning the post holder of PAS 7, there has been some changes about the position holder. Now, this is the third colleague holding the post. The position holder has very close connection with other bureaus and departments, especially when industry side planning is a major task of the post holder. Now, for agriculture and fishery land uses, there is much collaboration with the EEB. Now, for logistics sides, as well as farmlands and green industry, there is much collaboration with the AFCD and the Transport Bureau. If necessary, interdepartmental working groups will be established. Mr. Yik mentioned ecotourism in the Northern Metropolis. Well, that is not directly related to the portfolio of the colleague. That is mainly under the Northern Metropolis office's purview. Now, on tourism industry, by the end of March, we will conduct a market sounding exercise in relation to ecotourism. One is about the Lam Island, the other is Lau Fau Sound, the other is Southern Lantau. We plan to promote various kinds of tourism in these places, including ecotourism. We want to see how the market feels about it, so we urge Mr. Perry Yiu to help us gauge the views of the market as well. Mr. Brave Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Now, this is an establishment proposal. I agree that with the rapid developments of the Northern Metropolis, we need to retain the post. However, we have a fiscal deficit. Now, I praised the Health Bureau for offering us with a chart detailing the changes in the establishment. they showed us by how much manpower cost has been reduced and how internal resources have been redeployed. Now, since we have a fiscal deficit, we shouldn't always aim at creating or retaining positions. On the other hand, we need to reduce manpower cost. Now, you have a table on page 13 about the additional positions created. So I appreciate that. But you should also tell us what positions can be cut to achieve an overall reduction in the cost. Now, can you provide us with such a chart? For example, for vacant supporting positions, these may be made redundant by AI and digital technologies. That includes a clerical staff and secretarial support. Now, with that chart, we can convince the public that you are spending where you need to spend and making cuts in areas where there is redundancy. So can we have this chart telling us where you can achieve cost reduction? Now, even if that is not on the paper this time around, can you do this the next time? If every government departments and bureaus can give us these charts, it would be way easier for us to give you our support. Permanent Secretary, thank you. On whether we would conduct further review on possible savings on manpower. Now let me refer you to Annex 2 or Enclosure 2, the organization chart. Now for time-limited supernumerary positions, if the work is completed, we will not seek to keep the post. Now there is a position at D1 grade under the Spatial Information Office. Now, starting from 2022, the position has been cut. That is for the purpose of saving manpower cost. The original portfolio of that colleague has been absorbed by other colleagues. So we agree with the member that for redundant positions, we need to cut them to save cost. On the other hand, I hope members would appreciate that the work of the Development Bureau in the next few years will be ever heavier. That includes the development of Northern Metropolis and redevelopment and revitalization of old buildings. Our workload will only increase. Now that's the situation in the near future. Down the road, maybe the situation will change and we will revisit the situation. At present, I don't see any room for reshuffling the existing workload and cut the D2 grade position without affecting the efficiency of the department. And that's just my view, Chairman. It's not just this paper. Now, the government's workflow is now very complicated. In the 1980s or 90s, there was minimal regulation. Now, with a more vibrant regulatory regime, the workflow is much more complicated. Now, in the private sector, surveyors and designated persons are required to sign off the documents, and then the government will have their own surveyors and professionals to review the plan and sign off the plan again. That's redundant.
Next, Ms. Julie Chen. Thank you, Chairman. First and foremost, well, I have to say that I'm in support of the general direction of the paper. Especially, I understand that the project on the development of Northern Metropolis is of major importance. But I have 2 points of observations. First, I understand that under your bureau there are so many D2 position holders, and I find that the division of labor, the so-called division of labor, it's really very detailed. Are there any redundancy of the duties? For instance, the number 1 and 2 colleague under your bureau, part of their responsibilities are for land search. Is there any redundancy there? My second observation is that it seems that the workload of these colleagues are not really very sort of equal distribution of responsibilities among them. You have a number of D2 colleagues under you, but then some are shouldering more responsibilities, whereas others are just doing more simple jobs such as urban planning. I find that for this position holder, part of the responsibilities is to support NGOs for better use of premises. Can we perhaps look at the distribution of responsibilities among these D2 colleagues so that we could streamline their work processes and efficiency respectively? Thank you. I think in order to ensure that our D2 colleagues have a sort of impartial distribution of workload, this we fully agree. And we know that we have to review the situation at regular intervals so that the entire department can carry out its work more effectively. We will do that regularly. But at this moment, I really find that our D2 colleagues, I'm not saying that they are 100% equal. We actually have considered very seriously, and they are shouldering more or less the same workload or the same level of responsibilities. And whether the division of duties are too detailed, I think we are just citing some very concrete examples that may be the reason why you have that impression. Well, if we look closely for the D2 colleagues under me, some are responsible for the Northern Metropolis, some are for planning, some are for lands, and some will be focusing on buildings, revitalization, and these are the sort of their major focuses. So, well, each colleague will have a number of projects at hand, and they have their focuses as well. Well, some members ask if some of their responsibilities could be handled or delegated to other departments, but then we have to consider the achievement of policies, objectives, and also the effective operation. If the policy objectives are basically achieved, we will then delegate the projects to other relevant colleagues in other departments. As regards giving support to NGOs for more optimal use of vacant government lands, well, this is actually what the position holder is going to be responsible for. This position holder will have to go through or to screen through all the existing vacant government premises to see how our bureau could provide assistance to interested NGOs to make use of these vacant government premises. Some follow-up, Chairman. Talking about distribution of responsibilities, I think it should be according to the theme or to the basic policy. For instance, but then it seems that you are now not doing it this way. It seems that there are some duplication or redundancy, and there might be some coordination problem if that is the case. Thank you. Next, Ms. Carmen Ken. Thank you, Chair. Chairman, just now, the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Ho, in her introduction of the paper, she mentioned about in 2023 about the completion of legislative review and enactment. Yes, I was a member at that time, and I found that the work has been done properly. And in para 10 of the paper, it mentioned that in the coming years, there will be a lot of work for the resumption of land so as to support the development of the northern metropolis. I also agree that this would be very important. I'd like to ask some questions about how we could quantify the workload of these various projects. When we were talking about resumption of land at our previous meeting, for 23-24, at that time, the resumption of land estimates was adjusted to 9.9 billion, but then only about 5.5 billion has been used. And in 24-25, provision for land assumption is 34.2 billion, but then now it's only 24.86 billion has been used. In 24-25, what is the numbers in 24-25? That is the comparison of your actual budget used as compared with the estimates. Well, I understand that in your land search you have been able to find more land. Well, I'd like to know whether the 28.5 billion estimates could be used up. If that is the case, we would know that there will be more works to be done, so that we then would know that this position holder will have more, will have the kind of projects at hand, and there could be more quantified KPIs. And next, I'd like to ask about the 9 applications, only 3 approved about revitalization of industrial buildings. The success rate is indeed quite low. Why is that the case? Only about 1/3 of the applications have been approved. And among the approved, only about 1/3 have completed the works. What is the reason behind? 2 questions from the member. Thank you. For the first question, I don't have these numbers at hand. That is in 2024-25 on resumption of land, whether we have used up the estimates. You could provide it to us afterwards. Yes, we will do so. For the 25 billion estimates, it was provided at the beginning of this year. Well, this should be a kind of estimate according to the actual situation. Eventually, how much we will use, I think it will be quite close to this estimate. I will provide the numbers to the members after the meeting. Regarding revitalization of industrial buildings, well, I think the economic situation of Hong Kong would have an effect on these projects, because for revitalization of industrial buildings, the entire period for the work would not be too long. The entire process has been streamlined. After approving the application, the owner has to have the resources to conduct the renovation or revitalization plan. All right, Chairman, I think I will focus on my first question. The second question, I think, is mostly related to the owners. Well, my first question, in 23-24, you have only used up 50% from your estimates. In 24-25, you actually about 10 billion has been adjusted, and you also have not used up the estimated amount, and that's why I like to know During your land resumption process, I know that you have streamlined the development process. Is it helpful? And how you could further enhance the process, because now you have to have a land search and then relocate the brownfield operators, and then you have to do compensation and so forth. So there must be a lot of work. And Chairman, yes, I know that time is running out. I'd like to answer this question. Ms. Kan will remember that in 22-23, when we were doing the legislation or amendment, it allowed us to start land resumption before the entire approval was given by government. That is one way to streamline the process. The second is that when we're submitting our drawing to the TPB, we could in parallel conduct a land resumption process so that all these processes could be conducted simultaneously, and this would also streamline the process. So the legislation actually has helped us a lot. As regards when the compensation can be released, we have to go through some administrative procedures. For instance, after resuming the land, we have to check about its land ownership, and also we had to negotiate or liaise with the owner. I think, yes, we have to streamline the process no matter what. Yes, I agree. For land resumption compensation, I agree that the entire process has been streamlined. Indeed, it has been streamlined. But then the entire project, it's a bit lagging behind. But I know that in the coming years, we will have a lot of land resumption projects. Next, Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to express my support to this proposal put forth by the Development Bureau, that is to retain the time-limited position in the Development Bureau for 3 years. The paper is very detailed, very clear. I can see that I actually understand that this position holder will have a very heavy workload. There are various projects of utmost importance which have to be carried out almost simultaneously. Well, actually, I have the impression that this is really a very important position with very heavy workload. I actually thought whether there could be more colleagues helping this position holder out. But no matter what, I know that your bureau will have good arrangement and for the distribution of duties. But I know that we're not always mentioning about the industrial-led incentives, and also industrial development is actually very important, but also supply of land is essential. Without land supply, it would not be possible for us to have any industrial development and other economic activities. So I think in the portfolio of this position holder, one of the projects is about the works on the assistance to be given to brownfield operators. I really hope that you can have concrete steps to carry out these projects. For instance, for the brownfield operators, they work very hard. They have been there for a long time. I hope that you could really deliver these projects and do not affect them and force them to leave their operations. They can't even wait for the rosy picture that you have described on your paper. I think it is very important that coordination and it's very important in carrying out these very important projects. I heard one of the brownfield operators told me that he was very happy to locate a piece of land to relocate his operation. So I thought, well, everything would be fine. But very recently, he told me that he still has to wait. For instance, he has to apply for water supply, fire services, and so forth. So he has to be very busy doing all these kind of things before he could resume his operation. But then for the government departments, you may not see these as important because you thought that giving him an alternative premises, your work would be done. But then if they are, it is impossible for them to carry out the following up processes, then it would not be possible for them to resume their operation. So I discussed with the permanent secretary, and it was fortunate that some waiver have been given or time has been extended. Application time have been extended for him, so that eventually it was possible for him to complete all these formalities and to resume his business. So my point is that you have very good planning, you have very good objectives, and you well-wisher. But then in implementing the plan, it is very important for you to really carry through and to make sure to help these affected operators so that they could really resume their businesses.
Permanent Secretary, would there be an interdepartmental working group to speed things up? Yes, Chairman. We are fully aware that we need to enhance our case management for cases like that one mentioned by Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Not just the Development Bureau. The Fire Services Department, water supply, that's our purview. Interdepartmental coordination is necessary. So under the position holder, there is a multi-professional team, a multidisciplinary team to handle various aspects of the application. For example, submission of plans, fire safety requirements, water supplies, and sewage and drainage. So this multidisciplinary team is headed by PAS 7. Anyway, Chairman, I really hope that things would go smoothly without our intervention. Supporting smooth relocation and continuation of these affected operators should be a regular work of the government. Fully agree. Dr. Tan Yue-hen. Thank you, Chairman. I support the retention of this time-limited position. Now, with the tight fiscal position of the government, we are more wary when we discuss proposals to create or retain positions. It doesn't mean, however, that we cannot retain positions with our fiscal position. As long as there is an overall reduction in the establishment size, we can keep the necessary post from a pragmatic point of view so as to keep the development momentum going. Now, for this time-limited position, it was retained for 2 years in 2023. I think it is even more important or necessary to retain this position now. The government has done a lot of work in terms of boosting land supply. We are beginning to see the preliminary benefits of the government's efforts. This is a crucial juncture for consolidating the government's work. In particular, development of the Northern Metropolis. This position holder is in charge of making plans for the Northern Metropolis land use, finding industry sites, and so on. So I think it is necessary to keep this position. Now my question is, how does the Development Bureau's land planning for the Northern Metropolis relate to the upcoming 15th five-year plan of the central government? Would there be any synergy between the two. Second, in Hong Kong, residential developments and industrial developments projects are costly and they come with a very long work schedule. Now, if you look at the Shenzhen side of the hotel area, things have started to emerge. On our side, it is still a work in progress. So I'm very concerned about the high construction cost and the long work schedule. Every component is important. We need to start cutting costs and shortening the work schedule from the very beginning of the project. So in this respect, has the mindset of the Development Bureau changed? Permanent Secretary. Thank you. There are two suggestions. Both of them are related to Northern Metropolis. First, on the land use layout of the Northern Metropolis, we already have a blueprint. In 2023, we promulgated the action agenda for Northern Metropolis development. The 3,000-hectare large Northern Metropolis was separated into 4 circles. Now, Santi Technopole is a key area for I&T development. For Hong Shui Kiu, we are going to develop high-end, modern, advanced logistic industries. Now, for new territories north, like Hung Yuen Wai and Ta Kwu Ling, there will be sites for accommodating modern industries like advanced manufacturing and advanced and modern farming. And then there is ecotourism. So what's the relationship between that blueprint and the position we are talking about? There are many industry sites in Northern Metropolis, but we adopt a flexible mindset. We will try to be flexible even though we have designated a certain land use for an industry site. We seek to offer flexibility to businesses. So this position holder will be responsible for exercising that discretion. The second question is about the speed of our development, especially the comparison between outside of the hotel park and the Shenzhen side. The hotel park is an important project. The Development Bureau is responsible for conducting feasibility studies and technical studies. The land is ready, but there is definitely room for speeding up the work progress. So we will work on that. In terms of introducing enterprises and leading corporations to set up in the park, the ITIB is working very hard on that. Permanent Secretary, those who are members in the panel on development are very familiar with your plan. For other members, like the previous member who are not a member of the panel on developments, they don't know your plan. So maybe it is a good idea to brief all electrical members on your overall plan so that everyone is clear about your ideas. Ms. Eunice Yung, Chairman, I support the retention of this Directorate Grade C position in the Planning and Lands branch of the Development Bureau. Now, as many members have said, the position holder was responsible for introducing the amendment bill in 2023 to streamline the work process for development. We shouldn't stop here, but I don't see any more mentioning of streamlining of development workflow on the paper anymore. Now, I hope that effort will continue. Now, can the government adopt the country standard and the GBA standard more aggressively in our projects to speed things up? And I also think there is room for further streamlining the development process. So we should keep this position and the team under the post for continuation of this work. And of course, we need to speed up the reclamation of Longgutan. Now I have referred many companies adopting the country standard to do reclamation to the Development Bureau. So we need a team of experts to consider using the country standard to do reclamation. Now, by adopting the country standard, we can promote the standard to the world. Besides the country standard, it is also very important to follow the country's speed in works. Now, in terms of application of new materials and hiring manpower, I believe the portfolio is much larger than that under the Development Bureau. So we need this coordinating position. So I hope the position holder can contribute to the adoption of the country standard and the Bay Area standard in government's works project. Permanent Secretary, thank you. Concerning the streamlining the amendments bill to streamline development workflow in 2023 and also the resumption work, we have not stopped. There are many things else we can do. They are not necessarily legislative amendments, but rather administrative changes. For example, submission of plans for building superstructure on top of railway stations. We have identified room for compressing the workflow. So beyond standard and materials used, we can identify more room for better efficiency in terms of design. Now, as an international metropolitan, we have our own construction standard, and the country has their own construction standard. We can help align the country standard with the international standard. Now, when we have more updates, we will brief members as the panel on development. Mr. Holden Chow, thank you, Chairman. Concerning the proposal to retain this position, many members have put forward their views. I have two requests. First, the position holder is responsible for the technical studies on the reclamation project at Longgutan. As I have said many times to the Permanent Secretary, the planning for the future reclaimed land at Longgutan will be for modern logistic industries and modern industries. That's fine, but we shouldn't rule out the possibilities of establishing a high-end yards mooring facility to boost high-end tourism. I've written a letter to the Permanent Secretary previously on that idea. So maybe you can consider that option in your study. I don't know whether that will work, but I can see that there's a lot of potential at the Longkutan for a high-end yacht facility. Now about brownfield site development. Again, as I have said many times before, more support should be given to brownfield site operators. Now you have the multi-story buildings for modern industries to relocate the brownfield site operators. But not every operation is suitable for these MSBs. For example, those operations involving cranes. They can't be moved upstairs. They need a large open-air space to operate, and they employ a lot of employees. Now, I know you have a plan to use MSBs to house the affected brownfield site operators. But do you know how many brownfield site operators are willing to move in? Now, if there are 12, for a 12-story MSB, maybe only 6 floors are suitable for housing brownfield site operations, and the other 6 floors will go to waste. I know that's your plan, but I hope the resources can be utilized efficiently. If we have a better idea of what these MSBs are like, maybe it would be better for us.
A member has 2 suggestions or 2 comments. First, on the Longkutan project, Mr. Chow has raised the suggestion of building some yacht facilities there. Yes, we have received your letter and we are studying it. And we also have to consider the use of the yacht facilities and whether it is in line with the operations of the industries in Longkutan. For your second suggestion, yes, indeed, we understand that not all brownfield operators could be moved to the MSBs. So now our plan is that we will reserve some of the lands for use of open space storage. The member asked whether we can have a more precise estimate. Yes, we will bring this suggestion back to the Bureau. Well, if the position holder is the same person, we will follow that up with the colleague. Last member, Mr. Tim Buxton, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Last month, in the panel on development, I've raised my points. I'm not objecting to the retention of this position because one of the main tasks is to promote the planning of Tuen Mun West and Longkutan. What I'd like to know is whether there could be the ferry operation or the railway operation from Tuen Mun. And I'd like to know the relationship of this position holder to this rail. In the last meeting, the permanent secretary said that we have to look at the entire Longkutan project to see whether there will be enough justification to operate this rail line. Well, today I could see that there is actually the need for this additional rail from Tuen Mun Pier to Hong Kong Island. I hope that you could promise me that even in Longkutan, Inner Water Pier has not enough for infrastructural support to operate this rail from Tuen Mun South Pier to Hong Kong Island. Is it possible for you to undertake that this position holder will have the responsibility, or it will be under the portfolio of this position holder? That is going from the Inner Water Pier to Tuen Mun Pier. And if this is not possible, then from Tuen Mun Pier to Siu Lam, merging to Hong Shui Kiu Rail, and then going underwater to Hong Kong Island. What I'd like to know is whether this position holder, it will be under the portfolio of this position holder. This is actually my undertaking to the 500,000 odd residents in Tuen Mun, and also my concern about their the dire situation that they are in because of the heavy traffic in Tuen Mun. I'd like to hear your reply on this point before I express whether I will support this proposal or not. Thank you, Mr. Dean, for proposing this railroad proposal. In the last meeting, perhaps I wasn't I haven't fully understood your proposal about this additional rail line. You're right. From Inner Water Pier to Tuen Mun South Pier, for this section, it will be included under our Lung Ku Tan study. My understanding is that you are more concerned about whether it's possible to have a Tuen Mun South going eastward to Siu Lam and Tuen Mun East. After last meeting, we held a discussion internally about this proposal. Basically, for this rail position or rail line, it's under the purview of Permanent Secretary Lau. We will continue to examine this proposal to see whether it's possible to extend the existing rail. So the position holder we're talking about will work with Permanent Secretary Lau and to follow up on whether this proposal is possible. Then I will have to support your proposal. Thank you, Permanent Secretary. All right, let me summarize. I think colleagues are basically in support of the proposal, but then they have a strong request stating that the government should conduct an overall review about the existing portfolios of the existing position holders under your bureau. And we hope that the similar proposal will not come up again 3 years later. And also in planning your works, I think you should focus also on the development of industries. So we would put this to a vote. For those supporting this item, EC bracket 2024-25-13, please raise your hand. Thank you. For those opposed to it, no. So I think for members voting for this item, most of them are in support of it. So this item is carried. We will now vote on whether we will suggest the Finance Committee to continue to discuss this item, i.e. EC bracket 24-25 number 13. And also, according to the establishment panel guidelines, we will put this to a vote. That is, this committee will suggest the Finance Committee to continue to discuss the item under EC 24-25-13. And I'd like to remind members that if this is passed, that means we propose that the Finance Committee should continue to discuss this item. If this motion is not passed, that means we are not proposing the Finance Committee to further discuss this item. For those in support of the motion, please put up your hand. None. For those object to it, please raise your hands. Thank you. So I think members object to this proposal. So this proposal is objected. So that means we do not suggest that the Finance Office should continue to discuss this paper. Let's move on to agenda item number 2. It's about the proposed retention of one-time limited supernumerary post of Administrative Officer Staff Grade C D2 in the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau with effect from 1st of July 2025 or with immediate effect upon approval of the FC, whichever is later, up to 30th of June 2028, to continue to assist it in taking forward the implementing various youth development policies and enhanced initiatives. The government has discussed or consulted the panel on Home and Youth Affairs. So we have the Deputy Secretary, the Undersecretary for Home and Youth Affairs, Mr. Clarence Leung, the Commissioner for Youth, Mr. Eric Chan, Acting Principal Assistant Secretary, Mr. Hanman Bun, Acting Principal Assistant Secretary for Home and Youth Affairs, Ms. Agnes Lee. Mr. Ma Fong Kwok is not here, and since Chairman of the Home and Youth Affairs panel, Mr. Ma Fong Kwok is not member of our committee, and I would, on behalf of Mr. Ma, report to members about the previous discussion on this item. The Home and Youth Affairs Bureau proposed to retain a time-limited superannuation post AO officer grade C D2 in the Planning and Land branch of the Development Bureau with effect from 1st of April 2025 or up to 31st of March 2028 to sustain directorate support for implementation of various initiatives. The panel on Home Affairs and Culture and Sports has discussed this item on the 10th of February 2025. Basically, members supported the proposed retention, but then some members suggested that under the fiscal deficit situation of the government, the Bureau should actually reconsider the proposal and see whether there is room for internal redeployment of resources. And some of the members raised their view that they would not support this proposal. The Principal Assistant Secretary maintained that the work of the departments of the Bureau is very important, and the portfolio of this position holder would be very wide. For instance, the colleague has to conduct a lot of different projects, for instance, streamlining the existing policies and also expanding the youth hostel projects, also the youth link, and also promoting positive thinking of the youth. So in conclusion, they propose the retention of this position. Permanent Secretary. Chairman, members, good morning. Mr. Xi Jinping emphasized that it is important to emphasize that Hong Kong will prosper only when its young people thrive. Hong Kong will develop only when its young people achieve well-rounded development, and Hong Kong will have a bright future only when its young people have a good career prospect. Government is also has attached great importance to this. We hope to equip our young people with affection for our country and city, global perspective, aspiring and positive thinking mindset. We hope they could will have a fostering environment for them to strive. And the society is in support of the blueprint, and they hope that the government and different stakeholders could work according to the blueprint and also deepening the work of youth affairs. Well, for the blueprint that was rolled out in the end of 2022, our bureau has been working on promoting the objectives mentioned under the blueprint. Youth affairs has a wide scope of developments. We have youth affairs branch 1 and branch 2, and each is responsible for different aspects of work in promoting youth affairs. YAD 1 is mainly responsible for overall policies and strategies on promotion of youth development, whereas YAD 2 mainly responsible for promoting important youth policy measures, including supporting youth life planning and so forth. In the past 2 years, our Bureau work portfolio has increased widely, and we have been working towards the blueprints. We are of the view that we should retain this time-limited position of YD2. in order to continue to carry out with these projects. And the portfolio of this position holder is set out in our paper. We'll hope that this position could be retained for 3 years so that we can continue to with our work, and we are seeking support of members to retain this position.
Thank you. 7 members have pressed the button. If I give you each 5 minutes, the meeting will overrun. So we extend the meeting by 15 minutes first, and I will draw a line after Mr. Benson Look, the first member, has spoken. Those who would like to speak, please press the button as soon as possible. Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, Chairman. This proposal is about the retention of a PAS at D2 grade. I have been following up on youth affairs for some 20 years. I think this term of the government has achieved some breakthroughs in youth affairs. And the Home Affairs Bureau is now the Youth and Home Affairs Bureau. So by changing the name, it highlights the importance attached by the government to youth affairs. That's something that the BPA and myself have been asking for over the years. Now, this AO Grade C position, designated as PAS YA2, is responsible for many new measures in relation to youth. For example, youth hostel. Now, the number of hostel places has increased from 80 to 3,000 at present. Subsidies are also given to NGOs to use guest houses and hotels as hostels for youth. These are very innovative. And also the membership self-recommendation schemes for youth, the number has doubled. Now, Youth Link. At government activities, government events, and banquets, we see a lot of young people who were recruited through Youth Link. They told us they are very pleased to learn about the operation of the government from within. So these are very good programs for young people. So these are all portfolios under the position holder. So of course, I would support the retention of this post. I have 2 questions, though. First, Commissioner for Youth, that is a Deputy Secretary position, but there are only 2 PAS supporting the Commissioner for Youth. Now, because of our fiscal position, we can only make do with the resources we have. But since we have a lot of successful youth programs, will the government consider making the time-limited supernumerary position permanent upon its expiry so that we can deliver youth policies more consistently? Second, this position is responsible for implementing measures under the blueprint for youth development. Now, this is an evolving blueprint. Some 60 measures have been added to the blueprint since its announcement some 2 years ago. So will the government conduct an interim review on the blueprints to identify measures to enhance? Under Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. I thank Mr. Benson Look for his questions. He is very familiar with the work of our Youth Affairs Division 2. So I thank Mr. Benson Look for supporting our youth work and contributing his wisdom. I agree with him. Youth development work, including the Youth Development Blueprint, goes beyond measures implemented by the government. we need the collaboration from the private sector as well. So we propose the retention of this time-limited position in this proposal. However, in the future, we will strive to make this a permanent position. In fact, at the panel meeting, many members have mentioned that this position should be a permanent one. But with the economic backdrop, we will tread more carefully. And upon the expiry of the 3-year position, we will strive to have this made permanent. Now, in terms of the blueprint, we consult members' views every year. So in the upcoming meeting of the panel on Home Affairs, Culture and Sports, we will take members' views on the implementation of the blueprint. I believe you will conduct a timely review on the blueprint yourselves. So, Ms. Eunice Young, I support the retention of this AO Grade C supernumerary position. Like Mr. Benson Look, I agree that youth work should be continuous. So this term of the government has offered help to young people from different backgrounds. So I appreciate the work of the HYAB and the Commissioner for Youth. Now, the idea of a youth post announced in the 2024 policy address was implemented swiftly. A tender was launched very quickly after the announcement of the project, so I see how effective the post is. So Youth Link is also a hub for youth exchange in the youth hostel in Kai Tak. So for Youth Post, will young people not living in the hostel also be given an opportunity to take part in its activities? Can you make it like a clubhouse, radiating its effects to young people living in other districts? Near the Kai Tak hostel, there is the Kai Tak Sports Park. There will be a lot of young people in the area. So all young people from Hong Kong, from other districts in Hong Kong, should be able to participate in the youth post as well. So we need to broaden the horizon of the young people. So we should provide an exposure to foreign culture as the youth post as well. Now, the New People's Party has been encouraging young people to join the membership self-recommendation scheme. Now, the number of places in advisory bodies held by young people has increased by some 10%. But can we be more aggressive so that young people understand how the government operates internally better? Under Secretary, thank you, Ms. Eunice Young, for recognizing our work. Besides the Secretary, myself, and the Commissioner for Youth, the entire HYAB is working under the principle of greater efficiency. Now, in terms of the youth post, after the promulgation of the policy address in October, we already launched the tender in late October. That was the work of the position mentioned in the proposal. Now, by the end of February, tender was closed, and now we are reviewing the tender proposals. Now, for the youth post, we're going to engage a contractor for its work. Part of the youth post will be the hostel. But the youth post will also be a hub for young people from overseas and the mainland to engage in exchanges with local young people. We will encourage local youth to participate in activities organized by the youth post. We would like to make Hong Kong, this international city, a hub for youth exchange. On membership self-recommendation scheme, this term of the government has stepped up its work. Now, in the policy address, a target was laid down to double the number of youth members in government advisory and statutory bodies. Now, we believe that we can exceed the target. In the 8th cohort of the self-membership scheme, more places will be made available for young people to join the government's work. For interested youth, they are also welcome to do volunteering work in the community, for example, serving their community together with district council members and care teams. This will help them understand the community better while contributing to society. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I support the proposal from the HYAB to retain this directorate grade C time-limited supernumerary position for implementing various youth policies. This is indeed an important policy portfolio of the government. Youth work is placed as a top priority. Now, as youth affairs is now the namesake of your bureau, I think substantial resources should go to youth work as well. So I believe that you will come back to ask for a retention of the position in a few years' time. So by then, we can review whether the KPIs of the post set for the post are achieved. So I support the retention of the post. Concerning using the Kai Tak Community Isolation Facility as the youth post or youth link, I support it because with its proximity to the Kai Tak Sports Park, there are a lot of youth in the area. So I think you are moving very quickly. But on the other hand, you should have done that way earlier, before. Now, with my experience in the engineering sector, since the site has been laid idling for so long, there is a lot of work to be done to prepare the site for the new purpose. Now, these 4 stories building in the community isolation centers are very suitable for youth's living. And in the area, there is a lot of job opportunities and studying opportunities. So I don't know why the government has sat on the site for so long. There are so many vacant school premises in Hong Kong. Can we have smaller youth posts or youth links with various themes in Hong Kong? Many young people lament the lack of space for them to realize their potential. So we should fully utilize these resources to help young people. So I hope the government would consider my suggestion. Under Secretary.
Chairman, I thank Dr. Lo's view, and I also am very grateful to Dr. Lo's support to our work. We have heard your views. We will bring them back and further study them to see whether some of the proposals could be carried out. Thank you. Next, Mr. So Chen-wing. Thank you, Chair. Well, after the promulgation of the Youth Development Blueprint, I am very glad to see the works carried out by the HYAB. So, first of all, I am in support of the present proposal of retaining the AOSGC post. As what other members have expressed, I also agree that youth development work is very important, and I also think that this position should be turned a permanent position because youth work is very important. Well, I think turning it into a permanent position, we can better or make longer planning for the work development of the position holder. And I have a question. You've mentioned that in the coming 3 years, this position holder will have different areas of work. For the country work report, it was stated that we should deepen the exchange and collaboration of the country with overseas countries. Well, this is something new, and I believe that Hong Kong will have a role to play because young people can carry out this objective in a continuous manner. So I'd like to ask the government, what is your view about this, or do you have any plan for that, Chairman? Thank you very much. I thank Mr. So for his question. We now propose to retain the time-limited AOSGC post for 3 years. We also agree to what the member has said. We believe that in the long run, this position should be turned permanent. But then under this, the current economic situation of Hong Kong, we are now proposing that this position be retained for 3 years. We hope that in the future it could become or turn into a permanent post when the economic position improves. Mr. So also mentioned about deepening international collaboration. As I have introduced just now, the Kai Tak, the youth post in Kai Tak is one of our major projects. Hong Kong as an international metropolis, we hope that we have this facility, the youth post, in order to put ourselves in a better position to invite young people from overseas to come to Hong Kong and conduct exchanges with our local youth. This is one point. Last year, in our Youth Development Summit conducted last year, we also have done similar work. We have invited young people from overseas and mainland to participate in this summit. We have over 2,400 young people participating. Before the forum or the summit, and also after the forum, we have organized different activities to the young people, the young participants, including visiting our R&D facilities, our cultural spots. We have a good mix of the people in these activities. We have young people from mainland, overseas, as well as from Hong Kong participating in these activities. And it turned out to be a very successful exchange. By the end of September of this year, we will continue to conduct the forum. And also for this year, we continue to work with the Youth Development Commission to foster further exchanges between the young people of Hong Kong, mainland, and overseas. In the future, we hope that we could increase our funding support so that overseas and mainland young people, more mainland and overseas young people, could come to Hong Kong and to exchange with our local young people and to have a better understanding of Hong Kong. Next, Mr. Chen Wing-Kwong. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to follow up on the following points. Well, in enclosure 3, I understand that there are 3 Enclosure 3, I understand that there are 3 PAS. But then the paper has only introduced the portfolio of 2 PAS, but not the work portfolio of PAS 3. I would like to know what are the focuses of these 3 colleagues. And under the present fiscal deficit position, can the proposed positions workload be shared among the existing PAS? And also, I understand that youth development work should be continuous, but then your proposal is to retain this position for only 3 years. I'd like to ask the government about your consideration for proposing the retention of this position for only 3 years and not turning it into a permanent position. According to Enclosure 2, it's the job description of the PAS Youth Affairs 2. There are a lot of projects that will be conducted for more than 3 years, definitely. So I'd like to ask whether you are prepared to submit a similar proposal to retain the position for another 3 years after the lapse of the present term. What are your considerations behind your present proposal? If it's you come back again and again after 3 years to retain this position, I think the impression is not good, and it would also defeat the purpose of creating time-limited posts. I don't think this is desirable. And lastly, I'd like to ask about the PAS 1, whether it's a permanent post. If it is, then wouldn't it be unfair for the upcoming PAS 2 if this position is only time limited? So if both of them are PAS, how come one position holder has a permanent post and the other one is just a time limited position? I'd like to make a clarification first. Even though it's time limited position, it's still under or within the establishment of civil service. Thank you, Mr. Chen. You have 2 questions. First, about the work portfolio of the Youth Commissioner. I will defer this to our Commissioner. Second question of Mr. Chen, I'd like to reiterate that we agree to your observation. We agree that youth work is a continuous work, and for the long term, the position should be a permanent position. However, because of the fiscal deficit situation right now, we are proposing to retain it for 3 years only. Well, after these 3 years, or in the middle of this period, we will continue to review the situation, and we will report to electrical members to ensure that the responsibilities of this position are well delivered or carried out. There are different projects, as mentioned in the paper. We actually have 2 more very long-term projects which will be rolled out within this year. These are not mentioned on the paper. Well, first about Youth Square, we have mentioned it briefly only. We have it's in Namchong Community Center. We will also change it into a kind of youth hope. And these are the 2 very important projects which will have long-term effect, and it will have to be carried out long-term. So we believe that there is a need to retain the present position. Commissioner? This is a new position, the Commissioner for Youth. Well, simply put, all the work under HYAB will be under my portfolio, and one very important responsibility is to implement the recommendations under the Youth Development Blueprint. And I will also coordinate and also foster the coordination among the different government bureaus and departments. And we have a very important Youth Development Commission, and there are different representatives from different sectors in the commission. So we the commissioner, that is myself, will have to carry out the recommendations put forward by the Youth Development Commission. And for the two PAS positions, their work are under and also under my oversight. Mr. Chen, if you want to follow up, please do so after the meeting, since we are running out of time. Next, Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the work of the HYAB, and they are actually the first among the government bureaucrats to come up with a blueprint for youth development. So I'm really, I like to commend that. In the paper, you mentioned about a supernumerary position, AOSGC post. The position holder will have to carry out a lot of work, including the promotion of positive thinking, life planning, and so forth. I'd like to know if there are any KPIs for the position holder. In October last year, the audit committee report suggested that there should be a review on the participation rate of different programs, including a program for life planning and positive thinking and so forth. Especially for some of the programs, only about 15, the participation rates were very low, and some of them are actually has reached only 50% of the targeted participation rate. So this is not satisfactory. And for the 7 NGOs, only 4 of them have reached the participation rate of less than 50% under these programs. So I'd like to know what are the follow-up activities that you have carried out, and are there any KPIs for the position holder? Thank you, Mr. Tang, for your question. Mr. Tang has participated a lot in our work, especially in our work for youth life planning activities and also youth adventure training activities. Well, it's not because of the audit report. Actually, we work very closely with the 11 NGOs responsible for carrying out the activities under these programs. In the first year, when we awarded the contract to the relevant NGOs, we did need some time for them to carry out planning for the activities. But I'm glad to report to members that when we follow up on these activities, each and every of the NGOs has been able to achieve the objectives of the activities, and especially for those listed out in our policy address. After the first round of positive thinking, we have over 1,000 youth participated in the activities. And in the first round of the youth adventure training activities, over 10,000 youth have participated. So these are the KPIs, and actually some of them have achieved better than what the KPIs have stated. Mr. Wong Kwok, thank you, Chair. I am also in support of retaining this position. But it looks as if it looks like that this position holder will have a full plate. Of course, I agree that youth affairs are very important. There are different aspects of responsibilities of this position holder, especially for paragraph 26 and 27 about youth uniform groups and NGOs, and next about promoting volunteerism. For instance, it is suggested that there should be funding support for young people carry out exchange activities in Guangdong province with their counterparts. I am in support of these activities because I think it is good for our young people. But then for these two paragraphs, I would like to know further details or in more concrete details. For instance, in funding, how many will be funded? And what about the results of these activities? Any KPIs? Well, I'd like to learn more about your work on these two aspects. What activities have you carried out? What sort of results have been achieved? We hope that we could actually see concrete results.
Under Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Kingsley Wong. I fully agree that we need to deepen our work on youth policies, on supporting measures for youth uniformed group. This term of the government has taken the initiative to reach out to youth uniformed groups to deepen our collaboration. Now, in the past, we were only pen pals. We only communicated through correspondences. Now we are meeting them. We are meeting the management of the uniform groups in person and exchange views on youth works. In fact, every year, we have been deepening our work on family work as well as national education. We ask youth uniform groups to incorporate the elements under the blueprints for youth development in their activities, and our collaboration has been ever deeper. Now, concerning the youth uniform groups volunteer service program in the Guangdong province, because of the epidemic, it has been suspended for 2 years. Now we are communicating with the Guangdong provincial government on whether we can resume that program. Now, before the pandemic, there were volunteer programs in Meijiao. Now, after some negotiation, very quickly, by the end of this month, 2 young people from Hong Kong will go to Meijiao to deliver volunteering work. Now, by the second half of this year, we will launch a program at a much larger scale and longer duration. Thank you. Can you give us the number of participants in that program? There will be 2 volunteers this month. There will be more in the future. Next, Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I speak in support of the proposal to retain the time-limited position under the HYAB. At the panel meeting, I said as much that we need to look at the cost effectiveness of the position. Three years ago, when the time-limited position was created, the terms of reference was much shorter than nowadays. Now, there are new policy areas, for example, Youth Link, Youth Post, and the Youth Festival. Some 400 to 600 activities were held during the Youth Festival. So that's a wider breadth. In terms of depth, our youth work has also been deepened. Now, the hostel places for youth hostel has been increased from 80 to 3,000. For volunteering work, there is also a greater depth to our work. Now this year we have the national games. So many young people will volunteer in the hosting of the games. So I wonder by how much the workload has become, how heavy the workload for this post has become this year. Now the Hong Kong Jockey Club will donate $300 million for youth work. That includes the $150 million HYAB-JC scheme for youth life planning. So I believe it carries a leverage effect for having more funding or resources to support youth work. So I support the proposal. Now, how can we continue to further improve the cost effectiveness of the position? I declare interest. I'm the Deputy Secretary for the Youth Development Committee. Under Secretary, thank you. As the Deputy Chairman of the Youth Development Commission, Mr. Kenneth Leung understands dearly the breadth and depth of our youth work, so thank you for your hard work. In terms of cost effectiveness, the working principle of the HYAB is to enhance the quality and quantity of our work in every aspect. If we can save time, we can save money. That's our philosophy. We want young people to benefit from our policy measures as soon as possible. Now about Youth Link at the Nam Chong isolation facilities and also renovation of youth squares. In the past, these projects would take a very long lead of time. But for this term of the government, we are going to make this happen within this year. The two projects will be commissioned and open up for young people by phases within the year. So this is our vision. We need to move quicker in implementation of our policies. That's our objective. And that translates into a very high cost effectiveness. So I hope that in 3 years' time, when we come back, we can tell you that the cost effectiveness has been enhanced greatly. So what about making it permanent in 3 years' time? Thank you. That concludes the Q&A session for the proposal. Now we move on to vote. Now I put the proposal to vote. Those members who support the proposal in EC 2024-25-14, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those against the proposal, please raise your hands. None. I think most of the members in the vote supported the proposal. The proposal is passed. Now we move on to another vote on whether we recommend further discussion of this item by the Finance Committee. On whether the Finance Committee should conduct further discussion on this item. Now in accordance with Rules of Procedures for the ESC, paragraph 40A, I put the following resolution to a vote that this subcommittee recommend further discussion of the Finance Committee on paper EC 2024-25-14. I remind members that if the question is passed, that means that we recommend further discussion of the paper by the FC. If it is negative, it means that we do not recommend further discussion of the paper by the FC. Those who support the question, please raise your hands. Those who oppose to the question, please raise your hands. Please put down your hands. I think most of the members in the vote objected to the question. The question is negative. We do not recommend further discussion of the paper EC 2024-2514 by the FC. The meeting is now adjourned. The next meeting will be held on Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. on the 2nd of April 2025. Thank you for your attendance.